I kind of feel like we've got enough safe spaces now, but the sane space, the space of sanity in between um, race war now, white nationalism, and kill all the whiteys, uh, PC reactionaryism, is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Can you wedge yourself in here with me? There's like room over here to not be fucking crazy.
So I watched a good video by Sargon of Akkad this week on the Charlottesville riots. There's more to be said, but there's a lot to be said for his point of view, which is that the white nationalist protesters were pretty ugly. That whole thing with the tiki torches, they're never going to live that shit down. That they looked like they were, I don't know, going to root out Frankenstein, really. But they're angry. And the left is kind of acting like they came out of nowhere. Like they just are this evil that lives in the hearts of every white male, which makes them intrinsically evil. And it's just waiting for a mysterious excuse to come out. This didn't happen in a vacuum. I understand why people feel that bad things have happened, but unfortunately they're not being addressed, they're being avenged, and they're being avenged on people who were born fairly recently. I mean, I remember in the 80s, you know, when the Native Americans in Wisconsin would spearfish, and yeah, a lot of really racist white people would have a shit fit over that. Who wants to fucking spearfish? I could never understand why you would get upset over someone else getting to spear a fish. You can go to the grocery store, or you can use your rod and reel. Never made much sense to me, and I didn't agree with it at the time, but I don't agree with the sort of media piling on of collective guilt for white people either at this point in history. And I think it's because I'm not a collectivist. I don't think the group that you belong to is more important than who you are as an individual. And that should be elementary for Americans. That's what our country was founded on. But we seem to have abandoned it. And it's not just the left. I think a lot of people on the right don't understand that, like, the anti-white racism comes from the perception that white people are tribal and have done things on a tribal collective basis. A lot of young people have tried to make the argument to me that because now black people and brown people are acting in collectivist ways and acting to help their group, we're going to get swamped if we don't do the same thing. But they didn't do that out of the blue either. They're, like I said, acting out of your perceived tribalism. And if you respond to that with tribalism, it's just, the cycle is going to continue, and we're all going to wind up Charlottesvilling each other. I think I just made that a verb. Charlottesvilling. When you attack someone physically, or vituperatively, if that's a word, for being who they are. And it's not just racial and gender, it's people are seeing their side of the political spectrum as a group identity, a collective identity. And so if you look at the tapes of Charlottesville, I don't know how anyone could say that both sides are not at fault. They both showed up with weapons. They both showed up spoiling for a fight. I mean, if you're on the right and you say that, you know, leftists have violently shut down your events in the past, yes, they have. So what are you doing there? What are you doing putting yourself in a situation where you know you're going to be physically attacked? And it's a fucking protest. When was the last time a protest march in the United States actually accomplished something? The people who are there on both sides are there to show their political and sometimes racial in-group that they're a good team player. That's the only reason to be at one of these things. Or unless you actually want to get pepper sprayed because it turns you on somehow. It's virtue signaling, and it's virtue signaling on the left as well as on the right. Do you really think you're going to stop Mexican immigration by lighting tiki torches and marching on the public square like a bunch of freaks? You look like fucking buffoons. And it's one of those situations where I feel like I'm the only grown-up in the room and I don't care who took the first swing. You were there with shields and weapons and guns. I've had an argument with my co-podcaster, Edwin Oslin, bless his little heart, about horseshoe theory. Horseshoe theory is the idea that if you go far enough to the left or to the right, they start to resemble each other. And he took exception to that because he said that there's definitely a difference between the left and the right, which I agree with. There's a difference between the moderate left and the moderate right. They are reasoned positions that don't happen to agree with each other. That is true, and I lean moderately to the right. I think that free speech is an absolute right. I think that capitalism sucks, but it's nowhere near as bad as any of the other shit we've tried. I guess I'm sort of a constitutionalist, libertarian right-winger, but those are things that I've thought about, and those are positions that I've come to by arguing with other people and listening to other viewpoints. And that's what made sense to me in the end. But if you get far enough out on the left or the right, it's no longer a reasoned viewpoint. It might have started with a reasoned viewpoint, but a lot of people will pick a team because they agree with them on one issue, and then they'll retrofit and rationalize their opinion on all the other issues so that they fit in with their team. I don't agree with the right wing on a lot of things. I actually don't think that anyone who has a very strong opinion about abortion hasn't really thought one or both sides of the morality through. It is killing a child, but bringing a child into the world is often worse than killing it, depending on your circumstances. If you're, for example, if you're having a kid because you want a bigger welfare check, you should, for the sake of the child, you should probably have an abortion. And yes, it's evil to kill a child. But like capitalism, sometimes it's the lesser of two evils. So, wow, I really sound like I'm virtue signaling now. I think through every position, and I have a different... as I believe Sam Harris said, most of our decisions are made by something deep down in the brainstem, and then we rationalize them. So I'm no different from everyone else, but at least I'm trying, and at least I'm not out there with a goofy... Oh my god. Some of the Antifa had pink shields. And the thing is, it's true, the mainstream media won't let them take their share of the blame. And they jumped down President Trump's throat for saying that everyone was at fault. When, like I said, if you look at the video, everyone clearly was at fault. There were no good people there. If you were there, I mean, if you were there just to quietly protest or you were along for the ride, whatever. But if you showed up armed for bear, there was no clear and present danger to you if you stayed away from this stupid shit that is going to accomplish nothing except make both sides look terrible. But you know what? From the point of view of a moderate, I'm glad you both look terrible. I hope that your recruiting fails. I don't want to see any more stupid bloodshed. But unfortunately, this is my other point. This feeds into it and feeds out of it. The way the internet works is the more extreme someone's viewpoint is, the more likely they are to get shared and watched and to get a following to the point where they can, live off of this. And who wants to have a shitty job, right? Everyone wants to live off of creating content on the internet. And the easiest way to do that is to take the most extreme position possible, so that the people who are, let's say you want to take an extreme far right position because you're a right winger, but you start to slowly mold your own viewpoint from something rational into something that gets you a lot of attention, because you've noticed that that's, the left will hate watch you and they'll hate spread you, and you can spread your face a lot faster that way. I was about to say you can spread your message a lot faster that way, but often it's not even your message. It is something that you said to be extreme to get attention. And I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. I know people on the left and on the right who in private have completely reasonable opinions, but on the internet they sound like Fruit Loops. Why is this? Because reason doesn't get hate watches, reason doesn't get hate clicks, and it doesn't get the love clicks from people, from the yahoos, the low IQ yahoos, which exist on both sides, who just want to hear somebody say a really bold statement that's sort of in the direction that they believe in. Whether you're an anti-white racist or an anti-everyone but white racist, you can score a lot of points with the internet, positive and negative points score too, by just saying something bold and edgy about race. Here's something bold and edgy about race. Shut the fuck up about it. We have much bigger problems to worry about than tribal politics, and that goes for the left and right wing too. I'm sure this makes me look like a terrible team member, but I don't really give a shit. And I'm starting to think that left and right are not the salient teams. The salient teams are authoritarians versus libertarians, and collectivists versus individualists. Like back to horseshoe therapy. Horseshoe theory. A really far right-winger and a really far left-winger might have different ends in mind, but their means are forcing everybody else to do what I want them to do. And, they're not going to reason, they're not going to do it they don't want to do it in the marketplace of ideas, they just want to use force, or, the left is more powerful in the media right now, so they want to just use censorship to force everyone to think like them. I don't want everyone to think like me. That would be a boring world, and also I'm kind of crazy. But I'm not as crazy as most of you. For real. And then, but more germane to the whole Charlottesville bullshit is some people are collectivists and some people are individualists. And the collectivists are on both sides of left and right. They see right-wingers and white people or white people. There are people on the far right who are not white, but they see their political teammates and sometimes their racial teammates as, a part of their tribe, which is totally natural to human nature. If you'll pardon my tautology there. just saying something is human is like the nature fallacy. Just because something's natural doesn't mean it's good. Like cyanide is natural. Just because something is a natural human tendency doesn't mean that, like, oh, well, go ahead, stab each other with spears. That'll be civilized. At the risk of sounding like Steven Pinker, who quoted his wife's novel in one of his books as one of the great works of literature of our time, without identifying her as his wife. Fuck you, Stinker Pinker. But at the risk of sounding like him, we can make a conscious effort to listen to the better angels of our nature. And blind collectivism is not the way to do that. The problem is, just like with introverts and extroverts, even if they're more civilized, of course, I'm more civilized than you are. Even if they're more civilized, which I do believe to be the case, I've been to a couple of political marches in my life and had to leave because the aesthetic hideousness of people chanting slogans. Idiot lower level primates. When you are chanting a dumb slogan in unison. Problem is, I would rather sit in my house and read something brilliant written by another individual than listen to all of you chant something that's simple enough that all of you can understand it. The problem with that is collectivist yahoos are the ones who go out and yahoo and engage in all this political activism. So people like me have to climb out of our ivory tower once in a while and do something to sort of hold back the wave of tribal stupidity and tribal violence. Problem is, I don't know what that is. I honestly don't know what that is. People who are individualists don't like to go out and do collective action. And collective action these days apparently winds up with someone running a car through a crowd. So I don't know what the answer is. But that's the problem. The cooler heads amongst us are not the ones who are going to go form a political group. But we do have to do something to keep preserving the Enlightenment values, which I still believe in. Hi, Voltaire, to a certain extent. We have to do what we can to preserve those hard-won freedoms that we have. I think a lot of this young, dumb, and full of cum activism is predicated on the maybe it comes from the 60s, or maybe from the French Revolution, this idea that you always have to come up with something new. And to be a good person, you have to find something that's wrong in the world and be a revolutionary and bleed and make other people bleed to fix it. The problem is, no one has thought of anything better yet than what we have in the United States. I'm not the brightest person in the world, but I'm usually, if I'm willing to work hard, I'm usually fed, clothed, and sheltered. Not always. I've had some patches where I was thinking about eating my cat, but that's a lot better than being literally starving with no way to earn or get food in Stalinist Russia. It's better than being tied to the land as a medieval serf. It's better than being a chattel slave. We don't need to agitate to destroy what we have. We need to preserve it and we need to build on it. And yeah, there are tons of things wrong, but there's a democratic process. And I'm not a huge fan of democracy. People are stupid. And majority rule, I remember being in high school and voting on something, and I was the only person who voted for the thing that I wanted. And I was reading Ayn Rand at the time, and I was just completely offended by the fact that the majority of idiots could keep me from doing what I wanted. But that's better than having, SJWs with pink shields, firing pepper spray at, literally this time, Nazis. I mean, you guys, if you're going to claim you're not Nazis, don't chant busted old Nazi slogans. Jesus Christ. So, anyway, that's what I think about Charlottesville. I think you're all assholes. But then again, anyone who knows me already knew that. Ciao. So, just as a coda, I never actually got to the point I set out trying to make about the young, dumb, and full of cum Nazis. For people my age who remember the bad old days, for some of you, I think it's hard to understand where they're coming from. But if you're 20 years old right now, you were born in what? 1997? You don't remember a world before 9/11. And really, you've only come online mentally in the last 5 years. And the last 5 years has been largely bashing white males just for being alive in the media. They don't remember before they were asked to question their privilege at every turn. They're being asked to think about shit that happened before they were born. And yes, I know there's still racism, but a lot of these kids, they can't be everywhere at once. They can't see every incident at once. And a lot of them, kids these days, they live in their phones, they live in the media, they live in TV, and all that they see coming out of the mainstream media is, you're bad. You shouldn't have been born. You suck just for being alive. It's time for you to apologize to everyone. Well, being a Nazi is terrible, but like I said, they didn't come out of thin air. They've been told their whole lives that they suck. And just like we made excuses for black kids in the projects, I'm not saying it's the same thing. I'm not saying like these kids don't have food and shelter and stable families. I'm saying if you're told that you just suck, you're going to act out, because what do you have to lose? Everyone thinks you are a terrible person anyway. It's like having an abusive parent. If your parent punishes you for everything and is mad that you were born and shits on you just for being alive, why would you act nicely? Why would you play nicely with anyone else? I'm not saying they're right. I'm saying actions have consequences, and shitting on people from the day that they come mentally online throughout their adolescence is going to result in anger and crazy shit. So the left acting like this just came out of nowhere and these people are just evil and it's their parents and their upbringing. You make excuses for other people for reacting this way, so why not these guys? I'm not saying that you have a moral imperative to do so. I'm saying you might, out of self-interest or out of the interest of the country, out of the interest of not having Nazis running around angry, bashing people's heads in, maybe you want to treat them as human beings. I know Nazis aren't human, but before they actually become Nazis, you fuck these kids up. They're going to be wackos. But maybe the next batch tell them, okay, everyone really is equal. You're not especially evil. We're going to give everybody an equal chance. We're not going to discriminate against Asians in Harvard, which blows my mind. I don't even know how the left can justify that shit. I mean, they're not even white, so what privilege do they have? What's your excuse for discriminating against them? Anyway, there are going to be angry young men in the streets if you treat any group of young men as subhumans. When we treated young black men as subhumans, we got angry young black men shooting people. And we've still got that. We've still got that cycle of violence going on that we started by treating these kids like they're subhuman. So now you're solving that problem by taking another bunch of hormone-addled young men and telling them that they're worthless and everyone hates them? That's really dumb. You people don't learn. You just don't fucking learn, do you? I don't even know why I waste my breath. Because I don't even like the sound of my own voice. I have a really irritating voice. So in the past few months, I've seen friends, people I respected, people I thought were reasonable, deciding that, I guess because the group said so, deciding that hitting another person in the face is okay as long as they think bad thoughts. And sometimes I want to hit you in the face, but I don't do it because it's not right. But just tactically speaking, just talking tactics. If you don't even want to be more moral about it, since it's a moral issue, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be moral about it. Unless it's stopped being a moral issue for you and it's become more of a team issue, get those Nazi right-wingers. In which case, why should anyone take your opinion seriously? You're just a herd animal. But anyway, if you want some tactical advice, And I would like you to take this because I don't want Nazis running around doing whatever they're going to do next. If you try to strip people of their civil rights, and I'm sorry, saying Nazi shit is a civil right. There is no exception in the US Constitution for hate speech. There's no non-exception for hitting people either. But if you want to strip these people of their civil rights, or not even have the government do it, just effectively strip them of their civil rights by continually shutting down rallies for Milo Yiannopoulos, who I'm sorry, he's not a Nazi. He's not a racist unless you count discriminating against white guys because he doesn't want to sleep with them. Okay? You don't even know what a Nazi is, apparently, but some of these people are real Nazis, and by trying to strip them of their civil rights, you are glamorizing their cause. You know how when you were in high school and your mom didn't want you to go out and see that punk rock band? That's what you're doing to these adolescent kids who are angry and hurt and unsure about their future. You're telling them, hey, that shit over there, that's glamorous and edgy. You're the best recruitment tool that white nationalist groups could ever hope for. I don't understand why your self-righteousness has blinded you to that fact. I mean, it's basic tactics. I'm sure your parents told you not to do something when you were their age, and you snuck out of the house and did it, partly because you were told you shouldn't. Same principle. But you know what? If they get recruited, the longer they're in that group, as I've said, all of you tend to change and transform your views, or at least your public views, the longer you're playing for a particular team. In your case, the SJWs or the left. In their case, the far right. The longer you play for a team, the more you're going to mouth the most extreme things that the team believes in. And the more you mouth them, the more you come to believe them. So you're creating Nazis. Sargon of Akkad is right. You can point the finger at everyone else all you want, but these people wouldn't have the numbers that they do, they wouldn't have the momentum that they do, and they wouldn't have the anger that they do if it weren't for your shit. So I'd suggest you back down, but it's also human nature to never want to back down once you've picked a stupid fight. Fortunately, I live in a multi-ethnic neighborhood in Chicago, and it doesn't seem like most of the people in my neighborhood are punching each other in the face. So I'm just going to hope that this stupid shit stays among the stupid people, mostly college students, but also some adults who should fucking know better. And that is about all I have to say right now. Actually, no, it's not, but I have to go record the Savage Hippie podcast, which, you'll find out when you see that. All right, have a good night, assholes.